So really quickly, I know that your your mentor, Ursa
Yes.
Ashley. I have one of his violas
Right.
downstairs, which I'm not going to go get now. But can you talk just a tiny bit about like how you even wanted to do any of
Yeah,
this, or
yeah.
like
Since I was a kid, I was always into art, models, building tons of these plastic models, and ordering actually models from Smithsonian Institute, building like this Wright Brothers plane. Took half a year out of little balsa wood, and always into that. And then my father took me to Ursula Atchley to repair a bass. And when I was 12, and I saw this guy working with his hands, making a living doing something with his hands, and I go, I had no idea. I thought you had to become like an accountant,
Right.
or an engineer, right? Or something. I knew I'd be designing, right? In that sense, but I thought you have to funnel into a standard field. And then I saw this man that was repairing and making instruments, and I go, wow.
Yeah.
And so I went there every day in the summertime, every Saturday, and until I finished high school, and then I realized, hey, this is what I want to do, and I went to professional trade school for violin making in Salt Lake City, and that's how it started. But it just happened to be the right time because he was already in his late 70s at that point, and he was just kind of doing stuff for fun, not so much for business, and so he didn't mind taking on a young whippersnapper apprentice.
Nice of
and,
him.
and I actually on YouTube, it was great. There was a camera crew that came in, and they filmed while he was there, and I was there carving a scroll
that day,
full head of hair. It's there, and he's talking, and I'm behind him, and he said all my sons, they went into engineering and other fields, and Anton here, he's like my son because he wanted to do this, right?
That's neat.
So it was kind of like a passing on this tradition that he couldn't do to his son. So it was
important to him,
yeah, it was a wonderful relationship. Yeah.
That's neat. Yeah. So like with the shop in general, we haven't had any luthiers or guitar makers or anything on the shop. I'd love to hear just like some behind the scenes stuff at the violin shop. Like I know one that we were mentioning before the show is that you hear this all the time where I get calls all the time from people who are like, can you come look at my violin? I want to see before I take it into the shop. I want to see, is this thing going to be, well, I think it's a Strat, but, and I look in the copy, it says copy. But, I mean, do you guys get that like a lot?
Every other week, somebody comes in with an old instrument. By now, everyone's used to and understands that it's a copy, because when you type in Stradivarius, everyone on the internet goes, you don't have anything, believe me, it's a cheap violin. But before the internet, nobody knew. They would just read on the inside, and it said Stradivari, Guarneri, and they would know, right? And so they'd come in, and they're all excited. A decade and before, everyone's excited that they may have something, because it looks old,
right?
There's a Stradivarius and a label inside, and so nowadays everyone's pretty wise to it, because that's the first thing on the internet. It's like, you don't have anything, believe me, right? So they're already prepared for that. But 10 years and before, nobody was, and so everyone was coming in with these high hopes, and we were always the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, the bad guy. Yeah.
Right.
Well, they always have because whatever they bring in was probably like 1910 or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's old, but
right.
Not really.
Yeah. I mean, the Germans produced millions of instruments, in the mid 1800s to the early 1900s. And you could find them in Sears and Roebuck catalogs for $1.50 violin case and bow, for $2.50 violin case and bow. And if you really want to splurge, just go all out, pay the the $4.
Right. Yeah.
And in Sears and Roebuck, you could get everything back then, from violins to shovels to wives. You just order everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. So you got everything there. And so these German instruments had an outlet through the Sears catalog to go through the entire United States in a way that they just wouldn't ever have. And that's why you find German instruments in somebody's attic somewhere in Waskiki,
Right.
because the Sears and Roebuck catalog spread them out far and wide, and so that's why everyone everyone knows of somebody that they found this old instrument.
Yeah, I know mine that I have. It's a French one from like 1920-ish, and it's like Geronimo, I think, or something. But it was fun the other day. I was looking, went on the internet and I typed in the name, and so when the hell was this guy? I mean, like even what decade? And it said kind of 1910, 1930, around in there in France, and they said they're average, 2 to 4,000, 3,000, somewhere in there. I'm like, okay, that sounds about right, But it sucks when you look in there and there's nothing. I mean, you got no label or anything. I just don't even know how you guys like. I mean, I guess country is a little bit too.
Right.
France,
you have to
Russia.
just look at tens of thousands of instruments, and everyone in each field understands their product. Like for instance, somebody that really understands cars, they could look a block away and say, that's a 1957 Chevelle, only 5 made, and I would look at it, I don't even know what it is, and versus what year. And he says, oh yeah, because the bumper's like this and this. So people that know, right, whether it's furniture, houses, car, anything, people that know their field, just by looking and understanding, tens of thousands of those items, they understand what that is. So that's the big, the big aspect of just understanding instruments because of looking at tens of thousands of them.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
And like when you guys are when you're making instruments, what's something that, like a mistake maybe, or something that a lot of younger makers, is there some things that younger makers typically tend to do, or something that you guys specifically try to stay away from?
So this is the interesting part about string instruments. That very few people understand, even restorers and violin shops. Is that when I went through violin making school, I thought it was all about crafting a great instrument. So what we did in violin making school, we took 3 years making instruments, all we call in the white, just making instruments, and then the 4th year we went and varnished them all, right? And so you learn how to make instruments and be a great craftsman. And then when I varnished them, they all sounded like these German instruments. It sounded, and I go, well, this is ridiculous. I'm going to be making instruments, and they're going to sound just like the German factory instruments that are being mass produced. At that time, this was before China. And so at that point, I realized that it's about the finish on the instrument. It's not about your craftsmanship. And that bore out when I went to restore instruments, because I saw Italian instruments that looked like they were made out of a fence post. The quality of workmanship was awful. They weren't any good at all. And so this is something that I realized. Okay, the finish on these lower level Italian instruments made them an Italian instrument, right? It's not the workmanship. And it also bore out with history, because yes, Stradivari, Amati, high-end makers, they can make a living full-time making instruments, but most everyone else was farmers. And so in the summer and spring months, they farmed, and in the winter months, they did other things. So some people made furniture, and some people made violins, right? And so that's why you find a lot of Italian instruments, a lot of instruments in general, that are bad workmanship, bad wood, because these guys were just making instruments part-time, right? But the Italians had a finish that made an Italian sound, what I call the bel canto sound, or a voice quality sound. And so my entire time after I understood this, and after going into restoration and seeing these Italian instruments, and really it hitting home that it is all about the finish.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
And most violin restorers and shops, they don't know that. They focus on, here's the workmanship this and workmanship that. Very small, very small part of it to do with that sound. And that's why when our logo for our Kreutz line of instruments is creating the voice of strings. So if you go, we have two actually separate companies, KC Strings and Kreutz Instruments, and Casey Strings is the flagship store for Kreutz instruments that we sell really all over the world. And the voice of strings is that it's not no longer just a string sound; it's a voice sound, because the unique aspect of why these Italian instruments are millions of dollars. You go into Strat, why are they that way? It's because of this voice quality where you have a metal string in a wooden box, and yet when you play it, it's producing a voice quality. And a voice is a divine element, because it takes three divine elements of moisture, heat, and air. You can't have a voice underwater. You can't have a voice in a vacuum of space. You can't have a voice if it's completely dry in the desert. So it takes these three divine elements where everything else can exist in two. You could have botany grow underneath water. You can have viruses and bacteria survive in the vacuum of space. And that's why, you have in the Bible said, God said everything starts with a voice, because that is something that takes three elements to be in existence.
Wow.
And yet this string instrument, having a metal string in a wooden box, produces this voice quality when it has an Italian finish, when that recipe is. So my entire times from the time I left New York and came to Kansas City and started making instruments was to experiment with the varnishes to get back this recipe that was lost. And that was my focus, and it worked out fantastic with the business side of Casey Strings, because as these teachers came in and said, hey, can we have student instruments, not just your up line? I go, great, let me make these kind of student level model instruments, and I'm going to experiment and improve my my varnish skills. And so the student gets a great instrument, far better than they could at the same price range, and I get to experiment. And so that's the unique part about making that people don't know. And so I blew up varnishes, lit my leg on fire. I had things explode. I mean, I was experimenting because you have to get back to this recipe of and understand what they used, how they used it, what's going on, going into the physics, the acoustics of it, the chemistry of it. You really have to bore deep into it to understand what's going on with the finish. And
I always knew you were a mad scientist.
Yeah, I was. It really was. At that time, I was doing a lot of things till I found that the general recipe, and now there's kind of tweaking of it. But it's that was the big push in understanding what was that finish. And now I feel I have a finish that uses modern equivalents to things that they had back then that you can't even get now. And getting that that voice quality in the sound, and that's why they're in major symphonies around the country, and we put that finish on our midline instruments to give the student a better sound.
Yeah.